Hey, thanks for coming to 1500ESPN.com. I'm Derek Wetmore. This is Matthew Coller, company man Matthew Coller. We are out here at US Bank Stadium, the site of the Vikings improving to 4-0, Matthew. Surprising. We're going to talk about the game. We're going to talk about Sam Bradford. We're going to talk about the defense. We're going to talk about the Giants. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl. But first, before we do, please subscribe to our channel. It only takes you 2 seconds, and if you do, I can stop asking you forever. Subscribe 1500 ESPN Twin Cities on YouTube. It'll help us out a lot. Thank you. Matthew.
Yes.
Is this the best team in the NFL right now, the Minnesota Vikings?
I think they, tonight against the New York Giants, made their case as the best team in the NFL. The offense, for the first time this year, was dynamic. It was not only just halfway decent and moving the ball and not making mistakes, but they had big plays. Sam Bradford throwing the ball down the field of 20 yards or more went 3 for 4. I mean, that's something that I don't think we've seen at all in these first couple of games outside of one pass against Green Bay to Stephon Diggs. But Sam Bradford was stretching the field. And not only that, the offensive line played extremely well, and the running game followed along with it. Jerick McKinnon going for 85 yards,
How about that?
which I know is not blowing the roof off of US Bank Stadium, but at the same time, it's what's been missing from this offensive attack. We knew Sam Bradford could throw short passes. We knew he could not make mistakes and that he was smart. What you needed to see was a threat down the field and also a threat from someone not named Stephon Diggs.
Sure.
In the receiving game and the rushing game to get Jerick McKinnon going, but also to use Charles Johnson, to use Kyle Rudolph once again in the red zone, and then also to get McKinnon involved in the passing game and Cordero Patterson, the thing that we did not see coming going into tonight's game, but using different wide receivers. Now they look like a much more dynamic offense, which should be terrifying considering their defense was fantastic once again.
Sure. We'll talk about the defense in a quick second here, but to the wrinkles, 2 wrinkles that you mentioned that really stood out to me on Monday night. Cordero Patterson continues to impress me. A guy that is basically a forgotten man. Coming into training camp, no one's really talking about him other than, he's a kick returner. Maybe he's a gadget guy. And that's it. That was the height of expectations from most Vikings fans. Cordero Patterson, it looked to me like he had a whole chapter of the game book written for him on Monday night against the Giants. I certainly didn't expect that. Jerick McKinnon. Both of those guys add a slightly different wrinkle that we haven't really seen in an Adrian Peterson-dominated offense. Now the Vikings have some interesting options for how they go forward. We saw a wildcat even a little bit on Monday night. Do you see that the Vikings offense, what they did on Monday night, is sustainable? That they'd be able to keep up that level of play, that level of scoring?
If Cordero Patterson buys into the role of being a secondary wide receiver, a slot guy, somebody who just comes in and maybe runs a reverse or something like that.
Reverses screens a little bit too.
Right, he doesn't exactly have to be a bit player who only plays 5 or 6 plays a game, but someone who doesn't expect to be a number 1 wide receiver like the team had hoped when they drafted him. And I'm sure from players, when they get drafted, they get picked, they get hyped up, they get told they're this, that, or the other thing, and then they maybe don't realize their expectations and eventually have to just find their role on a winning team. And I think that's what we might have with Cordero Patterson. With Jerick McKinnon, I want to whisper this, but there's still some noise, so you might not hear it, so I'll just say it loudly. But the offense has more options with him than they would have with Adrian Peterson.
Whoa, hot take.
They have more options. It's not a hot take. It's an obvious take. That Jerick McKinnon went and lined up wide today.
Yeah.
He did the wildcat today. He can do things that Adrian Peterson either could not do or was not willing to do, and I was not surprised to see him succeed in the running game. This is a fantastic running back. I mean, you look at the patience and the ability to find the holes on some of these runs. Those were top-notch running back plays. And over the last couple of years, he's averaged 5.2 yards a carry last year, 4.7 the year before. I mean, this guy was getting big chunks of yardage just like he did tonight every time he got a chance, plus playing a role in the receiving game too. I think he's just a flat-out excellent player, which now, just think about how crazy this is.
Yeah.
Andre Smith gets hurt tonight, and the offensive line plays better than it had in the first couple of games. Adrian Peterson gets hurt, and the running game is better. Now, maybe over the long term it would have run better with Peterson, but he doesn't have to be the centerpiece. And Teddy Bridgewater gets hurt, and you replace him with at least comparable, I won't say better just yet, but at least comparable as a quarterback, and Sam Bradford was lights out tonight.
Sam Bradford's been great. It's been interesting to see that the Vikings haven't turned the ball over. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, they've been a force creating turnovers. Xavier Rhodes with an interception today. I felt he was the most impressive player on defense just watching through the first time. I mean, I guess we might go look at the film and see that Linval Joseph had another beastly game, which he probably
I
did.
would expect that.
Yes, Linval Joseph. So what do you... Now, you've seen the 3 games prior. You watched them back on film and maybe saw some things that, hey, I didn't catch it on first glimpse. Is there something new in the 4th game that you saw against the Giants that stood out to you as either a new wrinkle or something impactful that you hadn't seen before in those first 3 games?
Yeah, I think even though Xavier Rhodes ends up, I saw him on ESPN, he was on ESPN Radio,
Yep.
He's got the whole media scrum around him, and he had a fantastic game. And he's the guy that you can now trust on an island or just on putting him on one side like they did against Kelvin Benjamin last week, where you can pretty much use him in any way, and he can shut down top wide receivers. But tonight, one of the things that Beckham mentioned for why he only had 23 yards, career low, by the way, was Harrison Smith was coming up to the line of scrimmage. Smith is, if he's not the best safety in the game, then I don't know who is, because he is right up there because of all the different things he can do. He comes up to the line of scrimmage, showing blitz multiple times, and drop back to double cover Odell Beckham. So Eli Manning would take the snap and look over there, thinking he's got one-on-one Odell Beckham, which, even if it's Xavier Rhodes, is a good matchup, best wide receiver, one-on-one, you go there. And then all of a sudden he didn't. And then there was hesitation, and then there was checkdowns. And it was just a new wrinkle that I hadn't really seen from Zimmer's defense so far this year. And again, every week that I go back and watch the film, I pick out something that I didn't see in the week before's film, which just amazes me about Mike Zimmer's creativity.
Marcus Mariota, Aaron Rodgers, Cam Newton, and now Eli Manning. Is there a quarterback in this league that can challenge the Vikings and put points on the board?
Carson Wentz? Okay. I don't know.
Right,
we don't know yet about Carson Wentz.
See.
We will find out in a couple of weeks. It's Brock Osweiler next. And looking at the rest of the quarterbacks that they're going to face, Brian Hoyer or Jay Cutler. Matt Stafford is having a bit of a comeback season, or maybe he started that halfway through last year. Just looking at the rest of the division, they'll have to face Rodgers again. But in terms of how this defense is going to match up against the rest of the league, I think they're the best. I mean, it's not just that they've had a couple of good games in a row. It's that they beat the MVP. They beat 2 Super Bowl winners, one of them a multiple Super Bowl winner, and they frustrated the hell out of those guys. The looks on the faces of Aaron Rodgers, Cam Newton, and Eli Manning told the story. And tonight, 0 sacks, but how many pressures? How many times were they forcing Eli Manning to make quick decisions? And it's just been a different way every single week, and I think it really comes down to the talent that they have. That it's 5 or 6 players, we mentioned this before, 5 or 6 players on the front line who could be consistent starters for any team or superstar level. And I thought Anthony Barr tonight was huge. I mean, it's like you just start mentioning the roster and the amount of talent. I mean, there's a reason why Zimmer can do all the versatile things that he can do, because he doesn't have to limit anybody. He can play Barr in pass coverage or blitz and blow up a tight end. Poor guy trying to block tonight gets a concussion from getting hit by Anthony Barr.
That train coming into the backfield, that was number 55.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Barr. And there was another time later in the game, as the Giants were starting to come back, that they put him in the same role that Harrison Smith had been in, where he showed blitz and then dropped back into coverage and blanketed his man. I mean, the versatility of all these players allows a brilliant defensive coach to use them as his empty palette or whatever sort of art reference I could make.
Is he an artist or a mad scientist?
He's a mad artist scientist. He does science with art and then wins football games.
Very good. Very good. So I've got some Koolaid in the back, actually, and it's all it's only purple, but that should be no problem for you. You seem to be guzzling it by the gallon.
Wow.
So
guzzling is quite the word used there.
It's a loaded term.
Yeah, I would say, here's the thing. You can't argue with 4-0.
Yeah.
You can't argue with the teams that they've faced. I mean, look, the article on 538 that you've heard us reference a few times on podcasts because you're listening to all the podcasts.
They're really good.
But they wrote an article saying, hey, the Vikings might not be that good because of this offense. And then the offense comes out tonight and just runs over the Vikings for the most part. 35-25 in the minutes. They get the running game going. Multiple wide receivers are involved. Stephon Diggs didn't even have to dominate this game. He just had to be involved a little bit in the game and take away a lot of the coverage for some of the other receivers to get open. The only thing is, I am always looking for what's the team's weaknesses and what will other teams do against them. And they still do have some weaknesses on offense. We need to see it more than just against the New York Giants, who don't have the greatest defense. I think Kirk Cousins put up 29 points on them, and then the Vikings were good tonight. But every team is also not going to be quite as good as Green Bay was against them. Green Bay's defense was also very good, too. And so there were reasons why they didn't move the ball in every one of those games. Sam Bradford's also new. I guess what I'm getting to is, until I'm shown a reason to think that they aren't the best team in the league, or at least in that category of 3 or 4 teams that are way up at the top, I'm going to have to put them there.
He's Matthew Coller. I'm Derek Wetmore. 14-2 in a Super Bowl.
That's not a green screen. That's the real field.
That's actually the field. This is US Bank Stadium.
Thing.
They're still cleaning it, I guess. You should help out in that process.
Who, me?
No, I bet both of us. I feel like we're carrying enough.
Well, we're here
teams.
late enough.
Yeah.
Late enough, I mean.
We probably could get involved in that if we wanted to. Probably wouldn't be that interesting. Yeah. Interesting for the viewers.
Nobody walked behind us, though, today. It's very disappointing. There was no ship.
Yeah, we didn't have anyone coming by asking for a cigarette lighter as we wait to board the
We decided to do it inside this week. Did you notice?
Safer.
Yeah.
It's safer. There's just fewer distractions, too. He's Matthew Coller. I'm Derek Wetmore. Thank you for coming to 1500ESPN.com and do exactly what he just said. 1500 ESPN Twin Cities on YouTube. We'll see you there, and maybe we'll see you next week, too, as the Vikings try to go 5-0. Later.